The first colors of dawn crept across the foothills, streaking the sky with pale gold and icy pink. Journey Carter blinked hard, fighting the weight of exhaustion after another brutal night shift. Her old Ford idled beside a forgotten cattle gate, paint peeling, windows streaked with dust from the long drive back to Foothill Refuge. She rolled her stiff shoulders, letting her breath out slow, trying to shed the night's memories, the sirens, the blood, the hollow-eyed families waiting in silence as she worked. She thought about her bed. Just a few more miles. She turned onto the gravel lane, headlights catching movement in the dew-soaked grass. Something flickered. Too small for a deer, too wild for a stray dog. She squinted, heart kicking. There, half hidden by morning fog, lay a sprawl of legs, dark against the silver grass. Journey stopped the truck and stepped out, boots crunching on loose stone. The air was sharp and cold, carrying the faint tang of sage and distant thunder. She froze. Barbed wire glinted cruelly in the first sunlight, and tangled within it, a young Mustang foal writhed, sides heaving, eyes rolling white with terror. The little horse's coat was a stormy gray, caked with dirt and blood, its small hooves scrabbling helplessly in the mud. The wire had wrapped around one slender leg, digging deep, each movement slicing fresh wounds. Journey felt her body move before her mind caught up. She knelt, hands raised in slow surrender, voice low and steady. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." She looked around, searching for any sign of the foal's herd, a mother, anything. The world was silent except for the foal's frantic whinnying. She reached for her pocket knife, moving with careful deliberation, sweat prickling down her neck despite the chill. Then, from the mist behind the fence, came a presence that stopped her heart. A wild mare, a vision out of legend, stood motionless, muscles taut, nostrils flaring. Her coat shimmered like hammered silver, mane tangled with burrs and wildflowers. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, locked on Journey with primal suspicion. For a split second, everything hung suspended. Journey could feel the weight of the mare's fear, her rage, her desperate hope. She kept her eyes low, blade ready. "I know you're scared, girl, but I have to help. Your baby's hurt. Real bad. If I don't get this wire off, she won't make it." Her voice trembled on the edge of pleading. The mare snorted, pawed the ground, then stepped forward. One slow, deliberate stride, ears flicking between foal and human. Journey's fingers shook, but she held her ground. The foal struggled harder, panic rising. Journey caught the smell of blood, hot and coppery, mixing with the earth. She glanced up, meeting the mare's stare, heart pounding. "Come on, I'm just trying to help," she whispered. The world seemed to shrink, the only sound her own ragged breath, the only reality the desperate battle to save this little life. In that silent standoff, something changed. The mare's head dipped just slightly, the muscles in her chest unclenching. She stepped closer, so close Journey could see old scars traced across her flank, wounds from a past as wild and harsh as these hills. Journey nodded once, never breaking eye contact, then turned her attention to the foal. She slipped the blade under the wire, working quickly, careful not to slice too deep. The foal shuddered, letting out a thin, broken cry. Journey winced. "Almost there. Just a second more. Don't give up on me, little one." The wire gave with a harsh, metallic snap. The foal collapsed, legs trembling. Journey tossed the bloody wire aside and reached for her jacket, pressing it gently against the wound. The mare snorted again, tossing her mane, but she didn't attack. Instead, she stepped forward, muzzle trembling as she touched her baby's side. Journey swallowed hard. She'd seen things in her life that broke a person. Anger, loss, hopelessness that clung to your bones like a winter chill. But this was something else. She eased back, hands still raised, letting the mare nuzzle her foal. The foal tried to stand, legs wobbling but nearly fell. Journey moved quick, bracing the small body, feeling the heat and shivers through her sleeves. "I know, it hurts, but you're safe now." The sky brightened. Birds began to sing. Journey glanced down at her hands, sticky with blood and mud, and wondered if anyone would believe her. This wild bargain struck in the dawn, this fragile trust bought with pain and patience. A sound behind her made her flinch. The gate to the refuge creaked open, and Aunt Clara's silhouette appeared, hair wild under her battered hat. She called softly, "Journey, what's going on?" Journey looked up, voice hoarse. "I need help, Clara. Bring towels. Call Dr. Lynn. Tell her it's urgent." Clara moved fast. In the space of a heartbeat, the quiet pasture was alive with action. The mare whinnied sharply, circling her foal, torn between fear and hope. Journey, steadying the little horse, met the wild mare's gaze and knew, deep down, that nothing in her world would ever be the same again. As the sun rose, casting long shadows across the field, Journey realized this was only the beginning, a collision between wildness and duty, between law and compassion. She wondered, what would it cost to stand up for something that couldn't ask for help? Would anyone stand with her when the price came due? She heard the sirens in her memory, the distant thunder, the wild heartbeat of freedom. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. She couldn't turn back now. Foothill Refuge had never been so awake so early. By the time Dr. Lynn's battered Subaru rattled up the drive, the sun was a molten coin above the pasture, and word had already started to spread. Aunt Clara, arms full of towels and antiseptic, rushed to Journey's side. Together, they lifted the trembling foal. Nova, Journey decided, she'd call her Nova, for the burst of hope she brought, onto a makeshift stretcher fashioned from barn boards and old horse blankets. Willow, the wild mare, paced the fence, snorting with every movement, torn between trust and the pull of the open hills. As they brought Nova into the barn, Willow hovered at the threshold, hooves churning the earth, head swinging back toward freedom with each anxious glance. Journey paused, holding out her palm, voice soft and low. "She's safe, I promise. I won't let anything happen to her." The wild mare hesitated, then, as if surrendering to something older than fear, stepped inside. Inside the barn, the air was thick with the smell of hay, iodine, and nervous sweat. Dr. Lynn, brisk and gentle, inspected Nova's wounds. "She's lucky you found her, Journey. Another hour, she'd have bled out or gone into shock." Journey nodded, jaw tight, a dozen unspoken fears pressing against her ribs. Clara stood nearby, arms crossed, watching Willow with wary awe. "That's a wild horse if I've ever seen one. She could have killed you, you know." Journey just shrugged. "Didn't have a choice, Clara." They worked in tense silence as the morning stretched on. Journey held Nova's head, stroking her trembling neck while Dr. Lynn cleaned and stitched the wounds. Willow hovered, every muscle taut, eyes flicking from her foal to Journey and back. The slightest wrong move Journey knew, and Willow could panic, injure herself, her foal, or anyone in the stall. But she didn't. Somehow the fragile understanding born in the dawn's first light held. Outside, trucks began to arrive, neighbors drawn by the sight of emergency vehicles, the news that a Mustang had been rescued, the lure of something wild in their sleepy Colorado town. Some came offering help, hot coffee, extra bandages, old carrots. Others lingered at the fence, arms folded, eyes narrowed, whispering to each other in low, judgmental tones. Mrs. Foster, who owned the feed store, called out, "Journey, you know what you're doing is illegal, right? Those horses aren't yours. The government doesn't mess around with Mustangs." Journey stiffened, but Clara cut her off. "She's saving a life. That's what matters, not some paperwork." A younger man in a camo jacket shook his head. "It's not just paperwork, Clara. If the BLM finds out, they'll shut you down. You want to lose this place." Journey clenched her fists, trying to keep her voice steady. "If letting her die out there is what it takes to keep the refuge, then maybe we don't deserve it." The crowd grew thicker as the morning wore on. Cell phones appeared. Photos snapped. Voices rose. Someone posted a picture of Journey, streaked with blood and mud, kneeling beside the wild horses. Within minutes, the local Facebook group was ablaze. "Foothill Refuge harboring wild Mustangs. Is this legal? Paramedic breaks law to save horse. Hero or criminal?" By noon, the Bureau of Land Management truck pulled up, blue lights flashing. 2 officers stepped out, uniforms crisp, expressions unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. The crowd fell silent. Journey wiped her hands on her jeans and walked out to meet them, heart pounding. Clara stood just behind her, a silent pillar of support. The LUD agent, a woman with sun-creased skin and a no-nonsense manner, spoke first. "Miss Carter, we received a report of wild Mustangs being held here. You're aware that under federal law, these animals are government property." Journey lifted her chin. "This foal would have died tangled in barbed wire if I hadn't helped. I wasn't about to let her bleed out." The agent's eyes flickered with something almost like sympathy, but her partner cut in, voice hard. "That's not your call. The law is the law. You'll need to surrender both horses immediately, or face legal consequences. We're authorized to remove them today if necessary." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Foster shook her head. "Told you. They don't care how good your intentions are." Clara stepped forward, voice shaking with fury. "This is a rescue stable. We're here to help animals, not hurt them." The agent raised a hand. "Ma'am, I understand your concerns, but wild Mustangs fall under federal jurisdiction. If you refuse, you'll be cited. Your refuge could be shut down for harboring government property." Journey glanced back at the barn, at Willow's anxious silhouette and Nova's wounded form. The weight of the choice pressed down on her. Justice, law, compassion, all tangled like barbed wire around her heart. "If you take them," she said quietly, "you're sentencing them to death. The foal's not strong enough to survive transport, and you'll traumatize that mare all over again." The agents hesitated. The crowd shifted, some faces softening, others hardening with suspicion. The tension hung, sharp as the morning wind. Suddenly, one of the local teens, Jacob, a wiry kid Journey had treated after a dirt bike accident months back, pushed forward. "You're not taking them. Journey saved my life. She saves all kinds of lives. What's the point of rules if they just let things die?" Others began to murmur agreement. Even a few of the critics looked uncertain, eyes flickering from Journey's determined stance to the trembling foal inside the barn. The agent sighed, glancing at her partner, then back at Journey. "We'll give you 24 hours. After that, the horses come with us, one way or another." They turned, climbed into their truck, and drove away, leaving dust and silence in their wake. Journey let out a shaky breath, feeling Clara's hand grip her shoulder. "You did the right thing, kid." But as the news spread, hero or lawbreaker, Foothill Refuge under threat, Journey knew this was just the beginning. Compassion, she realized, always had a price, and now the clock was ticking. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of rain and the hum of a gathering storm. Clouds stacked over the foothills like bruised velvet, their shadows sweeping across the fields as the wind began to howl. Journey paced the barn aisle, boots thumping against packed earth, glancing out every few minutes at the sky. Willow and Nova stood together in the largest stall, the foal still weak, legs bandaged, head drooping against her mother's side. Willow's ears flicked at every clap of thunder, but she didn't try to bolt or attack, only snorted and stood protectively over her baby. Clara leaned against the stall door, arms folded, eyes on the weather. "Storm's coming in fast," she murmured, voice tense but calm. "We'd better hunker down. You want me to drive into town for supplies before it hits?" Journey shook her head. "No time. We've got enough. If anything happens, we'll make do." She forced a small smile, trying to sound braver than she felt. As the first fat drops began to pound the tin roof, Journey slipped into the stall, moving slow and careful so she wouldn't spook Willow. She laid out clean hay, refilled the water bucket, and knelt beside Nova, stroking the foal's neck. Nova flinched but didn't pull away. The barn lights flickered, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. The storm broke with a vengeance, wind howling, rain slashing sideways, lightning turning the world white for a heartbeat at a time. The barn shuddered with every gust. Willow's muscles trembled, but she didn't panic. Instead, she nudged Nova closer, standing square and tall as the thunder cracked overhead. Journey sank to the floor, her back against the rough boards, and drew her knees up. The adrenaline that had fueled her all morning drained away, leaving only bone-deep weariness and a dull ache behind her eyes. The barn felt like an island in a churning sea, the old structure rattling and groaning under the force of the wind. Nova whimpered. Willow's ears pinned back, and for a moment, Journey saw herself reflected in the mare. Raw, anxious, not sure what to trust anymore. She tried to steady her breathing, closing her eyes, letting the sound of the storm drown out the anxious voices in her mind. Memories rushed in, sudden and sharp. Her mother's voice, a gentle lullaby in the darkness, the scent of lavender and antiseptic, the ache of empty rooms after tragedy. She remembered the day she lost her dad, the chaos, the sirens, the hollow echo that never quite left. She remembered why she'd chosen this life, why she threw herself into saving others even when it hurt. Without thinking, Journey began to hum, a quiet, familiar tune, the lullaby her mother used to sing on stormy nights. Her voice was rough at first, barely more than a whisper. The sound mingled with the rain, growing steadier, warmer, as she found the words. "Hush now, baby. Don't you cry. Mama's here to hold you tight. Storms may come and thunder roll, but love will keep you through the night." The melody filled the stall. Willow lifted her head, eyes fixed on Journey, as if trying to understand the meaning behind the song. Nova's shivers slowed, breath growing calmer with every note. Journey sang through the tightness in her chest, letting the music work its old, familiar magic, not just on the horses, but on herself. Clara watched from the doorway, silent, her own memories flickering in her eyes. She remembered the early days of the refuge, the hope, the struggle, the reason she'd built this sanctuary in the first place. She remembered loss, too, and the stubborn refusal to give in to bitterness. As the storm raged outside, the barn became a different world, a cocoon, safe and close. Journey's voice faded to a hum, then to silence, replaced by the rhythm of rain and the deep, steady breathing of the Mustangs. She stayed there for a long time, knees pressed into the straw, hand resting on Nova's warm side. Eventually, Clara came in, bringing 2 mugs of instant cocoa, steam rising in the cold air. She sat beside Journey, handing her a mug, the 2 women sharing a moment that needed no words. After a while, Journey spoke, her voice low. "I keep thinking about this morning, about how close I came to losing her, and how easy it would have been to just keep driving." Clara nodded. "But you didn't. That's what matters." She looked at Willow, who now stood relaxed, head lowered, watching the 2 women. "That mare knows you saved her baby. Animals aren't stupid. They know when someone's on their side." Journey sipped the cocoa, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough, you know? Compassion, stubbornness, whatever you call it. The law's against us. Half the town's against us. What if we can't protect them?" Clara's face softened. "We protect them as long as we can. That's what refuge means. It's not about winning every battle. Sometimes it's just about being here, holding the line, giving them a fighting chance." Outside, the wind howled, but inside the barn, there was only the steady beat of hooves on straw, the soft snuffle of horses, the quiet bond of people who refused to give up. Willow stepped closer, nosing Journey's shoulder, her breath warm and real against Journey's cheek. Nova let out a small, contented sigh and pressed her head against Journey's leg. As the storm moved off, trailing lightning across the far hills, Journey realized that something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just saving a foal. She was fighting for a piece of herself, and for anyone who'd ever needed sanctuary in a world too quick to judge. Night fell quietly. Journey stayed in the stall until the last rumbles of thunder faded, her body weary but her heart steadier. She knew the fight wasn't over, that trouble would come with the dawn. But for now, she rested, surrounded by the fragile, stubborn hope she'd risked everything to protect. The day after the storm dawned clear, the air scrubbed fresh by rain, sunbeams turning every puddle into a flash of light. Journey woke stiff and sore, her muscles aching from the tension and the sleepless night. But her mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. She stepped out of the barn into the golden morning, stretching her arms overhead as Nova limped gently beside Willow, eager to taste the wet grass. Clara had already started chores, humming to herself as she filled feed buckets and swept the barn aisle. Journey caught her eye and managed a half smile. "You sleep at all last night?" Clara grinned. "Maybe an hour, maybe 2. Didn't want to leave you alone out here. Besides, somebody had to keep watch, just in case the feds came back." Journey's stomach twisted at the reminder, but she nodded, grateful. "Thanks, Clara, for everything." The sun rose higher. As Nova and Willow grazed, Journey studied the mare more closely, eyes lingering on an old, jagged scar along Willow's left flank. It looked nothing like the wounds she'd gotten from barbed wire. This was older, healed, but twisted, a mark of some long-ago battle. As Willow moved, Journey noticed something else, a strange pattern of numbers, almost hidden beneath the silver fur, just above her shoulder. She frowned, stepping closer. "Hold still, girl," Journey murmured, crouching in the grass. The mare snorted, but didn't flinch, letting Journey brush the fur aside. There, unmistakable even under the faint summer coat, was a freeze brand, a patch of white hair forming a string of numbers and letters. "Clara, look at this." Clara squinted, whistling low. "That's a government brand. BLM puts them on wild horses that go through adoption programs. Means she was captured once, maybe tried to be tamed, then turned back out. Poor things had a rough go." Journey's curiosity burned brighter. She remembered the hurt in Willow's eyes, the way she watched every move with suspicion, the scars layered over scars. I want to know her story. Maybe it'll help us figure out how to fight for her. And for Nova. Later that morning, Journey drove into town. The Freeze brand scrawled on a scrap of paper. She stopped at the small library, the bell above the door chiming as she entered. The place was cool and quiet, sun slanting through dusty windows. Kendra, the town's librarian and a lifelong animal lover, looked up from behind the desk. "You're out early. Everything okay at the refuge?" Journey hesitated. "Not really. You hear about the Mustangs?" Kendra nodded, sympathy warming her eyes. "Small towns. News travels faster than fire. How can I help?" Journey slid the paper across the desk. "I need to know what this means. Clara thinks it's a BLM Freeze brand. I want to find out where Willow came from." Kendra got to work, searching old BLM records, adoption lists, and local news archives. Together, they pieced together a trail of fractured information. Willow had been captured as a filly in a Nevada roundup, adopted out to a rancher in Wyoming, then surrendered again after she couldn't be broke. Her file was thin, a few faded photos and a note. "Returned to wild herd, deemed unfit for domestic use." Journey read the words over and over, something aching in her chest. She wasn't broken, she just needed space, and someone to trust her. Kendra nodded. "A lot of folks think wild means dangerous, or useless. But most of the time it just means nobody gave them a real chance." As she drove back to the refuge, Journey thought about Willow's journey, ripped from her home, passed from hand to hand, returned to the wild as damaged goods. She saw herself reflected there too. How many times had she felt out of place, fighting to be seen, wondering if she'd ever really belong? Back at the refuge, Journey found Clara tending to repairs, hammering a loose board on the corral fence. She shared what she'd learned, the bitterness in her voice surprising even herself. They treated her like a mistake, like something broken that didn't fit anywhere. Clara paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "I know the feeling. This place, this whole idea, started because I was tired of seeing people and animals thrown away when things got hard. The world's got enough throwaway stories. It needs a few more second chances." A beat-up Chevy rumbled up the drive, kicking up dust. Mr. Phelps, a retired rancher with hands like old leather and a gentle drawl, stepped out. He tipped his hat, eyes on Willow. "Heard you had a wild one in trouble. Anything I can do?" Journey filled him in, her words coming quick. Mr. Phelps listened, nodding slow, then knelt by the fence, his voice soft. "She's got the look of a survivor. You treat her right, she'll fight for you. Mustangs are like that. Tough, but fair. They don't give trust easy. But when they do, it means something." That afternoon, with Mr. Phelps and Kendra's help, Journey started gathering signatures from neighbors who supported the refuge. Kendra put up a sign at the library. Mr. Phelps called a few old friends, men and women who remembered when wild horses still roamed free by the hundreds. Some of them came by, bringing hay or just stories, sharing memories that made Journey feel less alone in her fight. As evening fell, Journey sat in the pasture, Willow at her side, Nova asleep between them. The world felt both impossibly large and suddenly small, like every story, every scar, every bit of hope had led them to this patch of ground. Clara came to sit with her, gazing out at the darkening hills. "I forgot how good it feels, fighting for something that matters." Journey smiled, letting the quiet settle between them. "I think that's what sanctuary is, Clara. Not just a place. It's a promise that nobody gets thrown away, no matter what they've been through. The stars came out, bright and close. For the first time in days, Journey allowed herself to hope, not just for Willow and Nova, but for the refuge, and for everyone who'd ever needed a second chance. The peace that had settled over Foothill Refuge after the storm didn't last long. Word about the Mustangs, about Willow and Nova, about Journey's defiance of the law, spread through the county like a brush fire. By the end of the week, the quiet country road in front of the refuge was no longer empty. Trucks idled along the ditch, strangers parked and watched from a distance, and local news vans started showing up, their satellite dishes scraping the sky. Journey tried to keep the refuge running as usual. She mucked stalls, fed the other horses, and checked Nova's wounds every morning, refusing to let fear dictate her days. But tension hung in the air, something sharp and electric that made her jump at every engine backfiring or unexpected knock at the door. Clara noticed it too. She kept the kitchen radio low, listening for updates, while keeping her phone charged and ready in case trouble came calling. On the third morning, it did. A convoy of government vehicles rumbled up the lane, tires chewing gravel, blue lights strobing in the daylight. Journey's heart pounded as she spotted the familiar insignia of the Bureau of Land Management on the truck doors. Only this time, they weren't alone. 2 sheriff's cars followed close behind, doors emblazoned with the county seal. A handful of uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting on their hips, sunglasses masking their eyes. Clara met Journey at the barn door, jaw set, fists clenched. "Stay close to me, honey," she whispered. "Don't let them scare you." Journey nodded, swallowing hard, then squared her shoulders and walked out to meet the agents. Willow and Nova sensed the tension, pressing against the back of the stall, muscles quivering with anxiety. Journey could feel their fear, her own reflection in their trembling bodies. The BLM agent from before, Agent Stover, approached, paperwork in hand, flanked by a second agent and the county sheriff. Her face was unreadable, voice clipped and official. "Miss Carter, Miss Davis, we're here to serve an official order. Under federal and state statute, these horses are classified as government property. Due to multiple complaints and the expiration of our grace period, we are now required to seize Willow and Nova." A ripple of shock swept through the small crowd that had gathered at the edge of the drive. Neighbors, volunteers, even a few local teens. Jacob, the boy Journey had helped months ago, was there again, hands balled into fists. Mrs. Foster, arms crossed, watched with a wary eye. Journey's voice shook, but she forced herself to speak. "Nova isn't strong enough for transport. She's still recovering from her injuries, and Willow, she's been traumatized enough. If you move them now, you could kill them both." Agent Stover didn't flinch. "That's not our decision to make, Miss Carter. We're simply enforcing the law." The sheriff, a big man with a tired look, cleared his throat. "I'd rather not see this turn ugly, folks. Let's do this by the book, all right?" Clara stepped forward, defiance blazing in her eyes. "These horses are under medical care. We have a licensed vet statement that says the foal isn't fit for travel. You want to take them, you'll need to go through the courts. We're not just handing them over because a few neighbors are scared of wild Mustangs." Agent Stover hesitated, but her partner shook his head. "You're harboring government property. This is a federal offense. If you refuse to comply, we can and will arrest you." The crowd shifted, whispers rising. Jacob called out, voice trembling with anger. "This is wrong. You can't just take them. Journey saved them. This place is all some of us have." His words echoed off the barn walls, sparking a chorus of protest from the teens at his side. Journey looked at Clara, then at Willow, then at the agents. The fear in her gut twisted tighter, but she refused to step aside. Instead, she pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and opened the camera. If you're going to take them, you're going to have to do it in front of everyone. People deserve to see what's happening here. She started filming as the agents approached. The camera caught the fear in Willow's eyes, the bandages on Nova's legs, the crowd that was slowly growing at the fence. One of the deputies moved forward, but a wave of teens blocked his path, arms linked, determined not to move. Agent Stover's voice was tense. "We don't want this to turn into a spectacle, Miss Carter. Please cooperate." Journey's voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "You already made it a spectacle. You made it a war between compassion and bureaucracy, between right and wrong. If you're so sure what you're doing is right, let everyone see it." The agents paused, looking to the sheriff, who glanced around at the gathering crowd, their cell phones pointed, live streams running, faces set with stubborn resolve. Tension stretched, brittle as glass. Then, as if on cue, Dr. Lynn's small car whipped into the driveway. She hurried out, paperwork in hand, her voice sharp. "I have a legal injunction. You can't move Nova. She's still under veterinary care. If you try, I'll have your badge and your job in the papers by sunset." Agent Stover blinked, recalculating. "We have our orders, Doctor." Dr. Lynn shook her head. "And I have mine. I'll fight you every step of the way." The crowd cheered, voices rising in support. Someone started a chant, "Let them stay! Let them stay!" And others joined in, the sound rolling over the pasture. Clara put her arm around Journey, her grip fierce. "We're not backing down, not now," she whispered. As the agents retreated to their vehicles, clearly outnumbered and outvoiced, Journey realized something had shifted. The community was rallying, some out of gratitude, others out of stubborn defiance, but all united in one thing: the refusal to let fear or law take away what mattered. But Journey knew this wasn't the end. The clock was still ticking, and now the world was watching. She glanced at Willow and Nova, her heart pounding with a new mixture of hope and dread. The fight had only just begun. By sunrise the next morning, Journey barely recognized Foothill Refuge. What had once been a quiet patch of pasture and corrals was now alive with energy. People streaming up the driveway, arms loaded with supplies, their faces flushed with purpose. The BLM standoff had set off a firestorm online. Overnight, Journey's video had exploded across social media, retweeted, shared, and clipped onto news sites from Colorado to New York. Comments poured in: support, outrage, offers of help, calls for justice. Inside the barn, Willow and Nova stood close, ears flicking at every burst of laughter or raised voice outside. The air was thick with the smell of coffee, mud, and hay. Volunteers arrived in waves, some old friends, others total strangers, drawn by the story of the wild Mustangs and the woman who'd refused to give them up. The barn filled with the sound of hammers, boots, and the quiet, determined voices of people working side by side. Journey moved among them, running on adrenaline, exhaustion forgotten in the rush of activity. She handed out buckets, thanked people for blankets, tried to answer questions as best she could. Every time she pulled out her phone, she saw hundreds of new messages: journalists requesting interviews, animal rights advocates offering legal help, local politicians wanting to visit. A group of teens who'd never set foot on the property before showed up, hauling bags of grain and handmade protest signs. Jacob, his hair wild, grinned at Journey. "Told you this place matters." He set up a folding table by the gate and started organizing snacks for the volunteers, as if he'd always belonged there. A woman with sharp eyes and a notepad cornered Journey by the hayloft. "I'm with Channel 7. Can you say in your own words why you're willing to break the law for these horses?" Journey hesitated, heart pounding, then drew a breath. I became a paramedic because I couldn't stand by while someone suffered. Why should it be any different for these Mustangs? Willow and Nova didn't choose this fight. All they want is to live, to heal. The law should protect the vulnerable, not punish them. The reporter scribbled furiously, nodding. The words echoed through the barn, picked up and repeated by those nearby. Someone started chanting outside, "Let them stay! Let them stay!" And the refrain caught on, swelling in volume until it rolled down the driveway and into town. Clara stood by the main gate, her stance defiant, as she addressed a group of skeptical locals. Maybe you didn't care about wild horses before, but you care about this place, about second chances, about standing up for what's right. That's what this refuge is for, not just horses, everyone who's ever felt alone. By noon, the pasture was ringed with tents. Neighbors brought thermoses of soup, loaves of bread, boxes of apples and carrots for the horses. Former critics became volunteers, helping patch the fence or sweep the barn aisle. One man, who'd once threatened to report Journey to the authorities, now stood by the road, directing traffic and waving at news crews. The local sheriff returned in the early afternoon, hoping to calm the growing crowd. "Miss Carter, I'm not here to cause trouble, but we can't have a riot. The BLM's still got their order." He paused, glancing around at the gathering. Dozens of supporters, some holding signs, others filming with their phones. "You're making a lot of noise." Journey looked him in the eye. "Maybe it's time someone listened." The sheriff sighed, then shook her hand. "Just keep everyone safe, all right?" As he left, Journey saw him smile for the first time, a hint of pride beneath his stern exterior. By the time evening fell, the hashtag #LetThemStay trended nationally. Videos of Willow nuzzling Nova, Journey singing to the horses during the storm, and Clara's fierce speech at the gate were clipped and shared millions of times. Messages came from all over. Veterans who'd found peace at the refuge, teens who'd learned to trust again, families who'd adopted dogs and cats when no one else would take them. Under the growing pressure, the BLM released a terse statement. "We are reviewing all aspects of the Foothill Refuge situation and will delay further action until ongoing community concerns are addressed." The news spread quickly, the crowd breaking into cheers. Even Willow seemed to sense the shift, her head high, her movements looser, as if she understood that, for now, she and her foal were safe. That night, the barn felt different. It was no longer a place of quiet struggle, but a hub of hope and rebellion. Journey lay awake in the loft, listening to the hum of voices below, the occasional laughter, the soft, steady breathing of horses. She thought of how far they'd come, from a single act of compassion in the dawn, to a movement bigger than anything she could have imagined. Clara came to sit with her, handing over a cup of tea. "You started all this, you know." Journey shook her head. "It wasn't just me. It was everyone. Willow, Nova, the kids, even the folks who tried to stop us. They pushed us to be better." Clara smiled. "That's what a refuge is supposed to do. Give people a reason to fight, a reason to hope." Outside, torches flickered along the fence line, and the stars burned bright overhead. In the silence, Journey let herself believe, for the first time, that they might actually win. That sometimes, standing up for what's right could change the world, one act of courage at a time. The fight wasn't over, but tonight, Foothill Refuge stood strong, together. The next morning, the air at Foothill Refuge was electric, charged with anticipation and the nervous energy of people preparing for a showdown. Word had gotten out. The BLM agents were coming back, this time with a mandate to enforce the removal order. The legal wrangling had bought Journey and her allies a little time, But now the authorities were determined to make good on their threat. National media trucks lined the county road, satellite dishes gleaming in the sunlight, and more supporters poured in from across Colorado. Tents and pickup trucks dotted the pasture, people bustling with purpose, united by a sense of righteous defiance. Inside the barn, Journey moved quietly among the horses, feeding them, checking Nova's wounds, and pausing often to watch Willow. The wild mare was a pillar of calm in the chaos, her coat gleaming silver in the filtered morning light. Nova, though still limping, had grown bolder, venturing a few steps farther from her mother each day. Journey ran her hand along Willow's flank, feeling the steady pulse beneath her skin. "We're not going anywhere," she whispered. "Not without a fight." Clara strode into the barn, her face set in lines of determination. "They're coming," she said. "Half an hour, maybe less. The sheriff's trying to keep the peace, but the BLM means business this time." She paused, then squeezed Journey's arm. "You ready for this?" Journey nodded, even as her heart hammered in her chest. "We've come this far. We can't back down now." Outside, the makeshift crowd assembled. Local ranchers, students, veterans, and animal lovers locked arms at the entrance to the refuge. Jacob stood at the front, jaw set, eyes blazing with the conviction of someone who'd found something worth believing in. Kendra handed out bottled water and homemade signs. Dr. Lin made sure everyone knew where the first aid supplies were, just in case. Mr. Phelps sat tall on his old paint horse, hat tipped low, a quiet but unmistakable sign of solidarity. The sound of engines echoed down the lane. The BLM convoy appeared, flanked by police cruisers. Agents emerged, faces grim, tension radiating from every movement. At the head was Agent Stover, paperwork in hand, her eyes scanning the crowd. The sheriff followed, his mouth a thin line. Agent Stover's voice rang out. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to enforce federal law. Please disperse so we can safely conduct our duties." No one moved. Jacob stepped forward, voice shaking but loud. "You'll have to go through us." The line held strong. Dozens of people, arm in arm, some trembling, all resolute. Cameras rolled. Phones streamed live. News anchors whispered updates to viewers across the country. The standoff was on. Journey walked out to meet the agents, Willow and Nova following behind her, the mayor's presence commanding the attention of everyone watching. Journey's voice was steady, but her hands clenched at her sides. "You're not taking them. Not without a fight." Agent Stover looked at the line of supporters, her own uncertainty flickering. "Miss Carter, you're obstructing a federal order. I'm asking you one last time. Let us through." Journey shook her head. "No, this isn't just about horses. It's about community, about compassion. You can't legislate that away. If you want Willow and Nova, you'll have to drag every last one of us off this land, and you'll do it in front of the entire country." A ripple ran through the crowd. Fear, excitement, unity. People tightened their grips, shoulders set. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then Willow stepped forward, planting herself squarely at the front, Nova at her side. The wild mare's eyes were calm, unafraid, her head high. Even the most skeptical onlookers felt the weight of her presence, a living symbol of defiance and hope. The agents hesitated, conferring quietly with the sheriff. The tension was so thick, Journey felt she could slice it with a knife. All around her, supporters murmured encouragement, some singing softly, others reciting prayers, all refusing to give an inch. The standoff dragged on. The sun climbed higher, sweat trickled down faces, but no one broke rank. The sheriff, caught between duty and conscience, finally addressed the crowd. "You folks understand the risk you're taking? A Obstructing law enforcement is a serious offense. Kendra called out, "And what about justice?" Dr. Lin added, "What about compassion?" Others echoed, their voices building into a chorus. Agent Stover's resolve began to waver. She looked at Willow, at Nova, at the people risking arrest and ridicule for the sake of two wild horses. The media captured every moment. Live streams flooded with comments, most in support, some angry, all watching. Suddenly, a young woman, new to the refuge, unknown to most, stepped forward with her toddler. She faced the line of agents, her child perched on her hip, voice trembling but clear. "My little girl saw those horses on the news and begged to come. She said they look brave. I want her to know what it means to stand up for what's right." The sheriff hesitated, then lowered his radio, voice quieter. "We're going to wait. Let's not make this a war." The BLM agents pulled back slightly, the legal battle now playing out in the court of public opinion as much as the courts of law. For hours, the standoff held. Supporters camped out, singing, sharing stories, refusing to give way. The live stream showed people holding hands, sheltering Willow and Nova from the storm of bureaucracy with nothing but their own bodies. When the sun finally dipped low behind the mountains, casting everything in gold, the standoff had become more than a protest. It was a declaration, a town, a refuge, a wild Mustang and her foal, all refusing to give up. Willow's steady presence, Nova's fragile hope, and Journey's relentless heart had united them. As the last light faded, Journey realized the world was truly watching. Their fight had become a symbol of standing together, of finding courage in unlikely places, of choosing compassion over compliance. And in that moment, with Willow pressed against her side and Nova at her feet, Journey knew they'd already won something no authority could ever take away. As dawn broke over Foothill Refuge, the land was bathed in golden light, and something in the air felt lighter. Journey stood by the fence, cradling a mug of coffee gone cold, barely feeling the chill of morning dew seeping through her boots. All around her, the camp of supporters was beginning to stir, people yawning in lawn chairs, volunteers stretching, some kids chasing each other through the grass, laughter pealing like bells in the bright new day. Willow grazed close by, Nova at her side, their silver and smoky gray coats gleaming as they wandered the safe perimeter. Clara approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on Journey's shoulder. "You did it, honey," she murmured. "You gave them a fighting chance. And you gave this town something to believe in again." Journey just nodded, barely trusting herself to speak. She'd spent most of the night awake, listening to the hum of distant conversation, the quiet snorts of the horses, the wind rattling the barn roof. It all felt fragile, like a truce that might snap if she dared breathe too deeply. But everything changed with the arrival of the first news van that morning. The reporter jumped out, waving a microphone, breathless with excitement. "Is it true? Has the Bureau of Land Management reversed its decision?" Journey blinked, stunned. What?" He thrust his phone toward her, showing her the headline. "BLM grants sanctuary status to Willow and Nova after nationwide outcry." The news rippled through the crowd. Jacob whooped, pumping his fist in the air. Dr. Lin burst into tears and hugged Kendra. Clara let out a shaky laugh, her arm tightening around Journey. Even Willow paused, ears flicking toward the swell of joyous noise. Soon, the BLM officials arrived, not with threats or orders, but with a formal letter delivered with stiff politeness and a visible sense of relief that the standoff had ended peacefully. Agent Stover, her face softer now, met Journey's eyes. Public pressure worked. Your video, the support, it changed everything. Willow and Nova are granted permanent sanctuary. Foothill Refuge will not face any penalties. Journey's relief was so intense, she had to lean against the fence to keep from sinking to her knees. She let the words wash over her, heart pounding in a wild, disbelieving rhythm. Cheers erupted around her, and the entire community seemed to breathe easier. But the impact of their struggle didn't end with Willow and Nova's safety. Donations began pouring in from across the state. Checks, feed, new fencing material. Local businesses offered grants. The town council sent a letter of support. And people who had never set foot on the property before now lined up to volunteer. Former skeptics, like Mrs. Foster, who had once called Journey reckless, showed up with a pie and a sheepish apology, offering to help mend the pasture fences. Foothill Refuge transformed almost overnight. What had once been a struggling sanctuary now pulsed with purpose and possibility. The barn was alive with activity. People fixing stalls, building new paddocks, hanging banners. Journey watched in awe as the community came together. Not just for Willow and Nova, but for the mission that now felt so much bigger than a single rescue. One afternoon, as the sun slanted low, Journey and Clara stood at the edge of the property, watching the volunteers plant wildflowers along the fence line. "Do you think this will last?" Journey asked, worry lingering in her voice. Clara squeezed her hand. "It's up to us to make sure it does. People are hungry for meaning, for a chance to do good. We gave them a reason. Now we have to keep building." With the new momentum, Journey and Clara expanded their vision. They applied for and received local grants to offer equine therapy programs for kids with trauma and veterans battling PTSD. The stable welcomed not just Mustangs, but abandoned dogs and cats, people down on their luck, anyone in need of a place to heal. Journey threw herself into the work, mentoring troubled teens, helping families find new hope, and always tending to the horses who started it all. Willow became more than just a survivor. She was a living emblem of second chances, drawing visitors from miles around. Nova grew stronger with each day, her limp nearly gone, racing the other horses along the fence line, always under Willow's watchful gaze. One evening, as Journey walked the pasture in the twilight, a group of volunteers gathered around a campfire. Laughter echoed under the stars, and someone strummed a guitar. For a moment, Journey let herself relax, truly relax, the way she hadn't since before she found Nova tangled in barbed wire. She looked back at the barn, lights glowing warmly, silhouettes moving through the open doors, the scent of hay and wood smoke drifting on the air. She realized she'd found not just victory, but community. A family made not by blood, but by shared struggle and the courage to stand together. Clara joined her, her eyes bright. "You started a movement, kid. Don't ever forget that." Journey smiled, watching Willow and Nova graze in peace. "We all did, Clara. We all did." As the fire crackled and the Mustangs wandered free, the future of Foothill Refuge had never looked brighter. A place of healing, hope, and the fierce, quiet power of people coming together for something greater than themselves. The summer days grew long and golden at Foothill Refuge. The struggle and chaos of the standoff faded into memory, replaced by the quiet rhythms of sanctuary life. The refuge had become more than a haven for Willow and Nova. It had grown into a living, breathing family, a tapestry of people and animals learning, healing, and growing together. Willow, once untouchable, now stood at the heart of it all. She grazed calmly in the paddock, welcoming gentle strokes from visitors, her body language soft and open, her wild eyes full of quiet intelligence. She had become the soul of the refuge, a living story that Journey loved to share with each new arrival. Nova, spirited and bold, was always nearby, racing through the grass, tail flying, her limp nearly vanished. She played with the other horses and nuzzled the children who came to visit, her courage contagious. Together, the Mustangs inspired everyone who crossed their path. Journey's own life was transformed. She'd always been the caretaker, rushing in to help, carrying other people's pain. But now, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to slow down. She woke each morning to the sound of horses nickering, the distant laughter of volunteers, the gentle murmur of Clara and Dr. Lynn chatting over coffee. She felt herself exhale the last of the old, stale grief, the guilt over her father's death, the loneliness that had driven her into the wild hours of paramedic work. She found new purpose in the rhythm of caring for Willow and Nova, and for the wounded souls who came seeking sanctuary. Troubled teens arrived, some sullen and withdrawn, others angry and defiant. Journey met them where they were, handing them brushes, hay bales, or simply a quiet place to sit and breathe. She saw herself in their eyes, the uncertainty, the hunger to belong, the ache of old wounds. Willow responded to each visitor differently. Some she approached right away, letting them stroke her thick mane. Others she watched from a distance, offering only her presence, a silent promise. "You're safe here. Take your time." There was Marcus, a teenager sent by his foster parents after he'd been caught fighting in school. At first, he barely spoke. He sat in the pasture, tossing rocks, eyes fixed on the ground. But Willow approached him, standing close, lowering her head until he could feel her breath. Day by day, Marcus opened up, first to Willow, then to Journey, and finally to his foster family. He started helping out around the barn, caring for the horses, his anger slowly softening into confidence. A grieving family visited after losing their son in a car accident. They came for the quiet, but stayed for Willow, who seemed to sense their sorrow. She stood beside them in the field, her warmth and patience a comfort nothing else could match. By the end of the week, the family left with a sense of peace and a promise to return as volunteers. Willow's healing became a symbol for everyone at Foothill Refuge. She had survived pain and rejection, had learned to trust again, and now she gave that gift to others. Journey saw it every day, in the children who smiled for the first time in months, in the teens who found new hope, in the adults who rediscovered purpose through acts of kindness. Nova grew strong, her story a favorite with visitors. People brought apples and carrots, cheering as she ran across the pasture. Kids traced the outline of her old scars, amazed at her resilience. Nova loved the attention, always returning to Willow's side when she tired. Her transformation from a helpless, wounded foal to a vibrant, beloved member of the herd filled everyone with pride. Journey, too, had changed. She no longer saw herself as an outsider, no longer defined by past loss or the judgments of others. She built a new family at the refuge, one that included Clara, Dr. Lynn, Kendra, Jacob, Marcus, and so many others who had found themselves welcomed, just as they were. Some nights, after the chores were done and the visitors had gone home, Journey would sit with Clara by the pasture fence. They watched the herd graze in the moonlight, Willow standing tall and peaceful, Nova curled up at her feet. Journey would rest her head on Clara's shoulder and whisper, "I never thought I'd belong anywhere like this." Clara would chuckle, her voice gentle. "Nobody does, not at first. Belonging isn't something you find. It's something you build, day by day, with every act of kindness." As summer waned, the refuge hosted its first open house. Families came from all over, eager to meet the Mustangs and share their own stories. Journey gave tours, telling Willow's tale with pride, She spoke of second chances, of healing, of how compassion, given freely and without judgment, could change everything. When the sun set, painting the sky with fiery color, Journey stood at the gate, watching as the last visitors waved goodbye. She felt a warmth inside her that had nothing to do with the evening air. The old fears of failure, of being alone, had faded. In their place was the knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be, surrounded by those who understood what it meant to fight for hope. Willow and Nova stood at her side, shining in the twilight, symbols of survival and belonging. And for the first time, Journey truly believed in the possibility of lasting peace. Years passed, marked by the steady rhythm of changing seasons and the gentle, relentless growth of life at Foothill Refuge. The wild winds that once threatened to uproot everything had softened to warm breezes, and the scars on horses, on people, had faded into the stories that bound them all together. Journey stood at the old wooden fence as the evening settled over the hills, her hands resting atop the sun-bleached boards. Her hair was streaked with silver now, and the lines around her eyes told stories of both hardship and laughter. Beside her, Willow grazed in the waning light, her once sharp vigilance softened by years of safety and belonging. Nova, tall and powerful, her gray coat dappled with white, ran the far fence line with her own spirited foals at her heels. Visitors still came from all over. Some arrived lost, carrying wounds too heavy for words. Some were children, wide-eyed and hopeful. Others came with burdens of regret, or simply the longing to witness what hope could look like, made real in wild horses and the people who refused to give up on them. Each new arrival found sanctuary not just in the physical space, but in the open arms of a community forged in compassion and defiance. Journey would walk with them in the quiet hours, out across the rolling fields, through the paddocks where wildflowers grew thick and untamed. She shared Willow's story again and again, not just as a tale of rescue, but as a lesson in trust and resilience. She spoke of the day she'd found Nova tangled in wire, the wild standoff that had brought the town together, the moment when a single act of courage had sparked a movement that echoed far beyond those hills. Sanctuary, Journey had learned, wasn't just about walls and fences or keeping danger at bay. Real sanctuary meant choosing to open your heart again and again, even when you'd been hurt. It meant building trust slowly, sometimes painfully, until it became strong enough to hold both grief and joy. It meant standing up, not just for yourself, but for those whose voices were too small or too broken to be heard. She saw the lesson play out every day. Mr. Phelps, older and a little slower, still visited, telling stories to new volunteers and teaching them the gentle art of earning a Mustang's trust. Marcus, once a lost teen, now ran the therapy programs, helping troubled kids find their own strength among the horses. Kendra managed the refugees' education wing, giving tours and organizing community outreach. Dr. Lynn's medical trailer had become a fixture, offering care to any creature in need, four-legged or two. Clara, her spirit undimmed by age, had long since turned the day-to-day running of the refuge over to Journey, but she could still be found in the garden most mornings, hands deep in the earth, humming old lullabies as she worked. She called the refuge her family's greatest rebellion, and meant every word. Foothill Refuge flourished. The fences stretched farther now, enclosing more pastures. A new barn rose beside the old, bright and bustling with volunteers. Willow's descendants roamed freely, their herds a testament to survival and the refusal to be tamed by anyone's expectations but their own. Journey watched them, always with awe, remembering the trembling foal and her desperate, wild mother. The start of it all. But it wasn't just animals who found their way there. People came seeking second chances, drawn by a place where trust was not demanded, but gently earned, where every scar was honored as a sign of survival, not weakness. Journey welcomed them all. Runaways, veterans, parents with grieving hearts, and kids who had never been told they mattered. She knew what it was to hurt, to doubt, to long for a home where you didn't have to explain the ways you were broken. Willow had taught her. The only true freedom was the freedom to choose your family, to choose to belong. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves tumbled across the fields, Journey gathered the volunteers and visitors beneath the big willow tree at the heart of the refuge. She looked at the faces turned toward her, young, old, scarred, shining with hope, and felt a quiet joy settle in her bones. She spoke, her voice steady, the words coming from a place deeper than memory. Sanctuary isn't just safety. It's the right to choose who we trust and to belong, even after we've been hurt. It's standing up for those who have no voice and building something that lasts, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who needs it. She looked out at Willow, at Nova's wild offspring tearing across the hills, at Clara's garden bursting with late-season sunflowers. We didn't save Willow and Nova just for them. We did it for all of us, because every act of courage, no matter how small, changes the world. Every time we choose compassion over indifference, we build a future where all belong. The lesson echoed through the crowd, and later, as the sun set and people drifted back to their homes, many carried it with them, tucked into their hearts like a secret seed. Journey stayed by the fence long after dark, watching the stars come out. She thought about how far they'd all come, about the battles won and the ones still ahead. She knew the world was still hard, still quick to judge and slow to trust. But she also knew, because Willow had shown her, because Foothill Refuge had made it real, that there would always be a place for the wild and the wounded, for those who refused to give up hope. And so, under the wide Colorado sky, Journey whispered one last promise to the night. As long as I draw breath, this will be a place where freedom and healing walk side by side, where trust is chosen and every scar is proof of survival, where no one, horse or human, is ever turned away. If Willow's story inspired you, Journey would say, share it, because in the end, every act of courage, big or small, helps create a world where all belong, and that, she knew, was the greatest freedom of all.